Welcome back to the gold mine today.
First things first, we got to get our generator running.
Perfect.
We also brought us a 5-gallon bucket of water. We need to refill our shaker table. Oh my goodness.
Why is a bucket of water so heavy? I hope that's enough. I only brought one bucket of water.
And I did manage to spill about half of it here on the deck. See if it all works pretty good. Get all the leaves out of here.
Seems to be working pretty good. So normally when I'm working the shaker table, I dump all of our soil samples into this screen
And I shake it onto the shaker table.
with the understanding that most of the gold we're going to be finding is super small. But based on our metal detecting, that may not be the case.
So once we finish shaking as much of this fine material out as we can, I think we'll take whatever's left and put it in the rock crusher.
And that'll pretty much just give us more powdery material to put back in the thing. So I think our plan for the day is to take the metal detector down to the mine. We had many targets yesterday that looked like they might be good spots for gold. And we'll use our little chip hammer and a shovel and bring that material back up. Probably just put it in a plastic bucket
And run it through the shaker table.
Let's get started. Anybody down there? Looks like the mine shaft is dry with no animals. So that's a good sign.
All right, we have the ore cart loaded up. We have our chip hammer. We have a gold pan, our metal detector, a pair of gloves, a little plastic scoop, and a 5-gallon bucket.
Hook the ore cart up, run it down, and get to work. Now since we're working on our own out here today, we are going to put on our safety harness. Yeah, I know. It's just a piece of rope around my waist. But we do hook that up to an OSHA approved hoist fall device. With any luck, if we fall, we'll hang there until somebody finds us. All right, all we do is tie a nice little square knot.
And then up here where the hoist is, I also have this guy.
This is for safety. It just locks onto our rope, so everything will stay safe.
Hook up the ore cart. All right, we'll just run that thing down.
Usually I'd let you guys ride in the ore cart, but you did that yesterday, so you can stay up here with me. Perfect. All right, so for the way down, I'm gonna turn my light on, put my gloves on, but I'm probably not gonna film it because I need to hold on. All right, we made it down in the mine. I can hear the ventilators are running.
Good news is the light is working back in the tunnel.
We're gonna take off our gloves, get our metal detector, and get to work.
So I think we're going to start out with the metal detector, checking everything down low, and if we find a good target, we're just going to use our chip hammer and fill up this little gold pan.
And then we'll transfer that into the 5-gallon bucket for later.
We should probably go back here and get our 5-gallon bucket and our little scooper,
Because with any luck, we're gonna need that.
all right. Back to the end of the tunnel. Let's get busy. We're getting better at using this metal detector. It's pretty much you just push the button. It all lights up. It starts with a ground frequency of 90. Is it a ground frequency or a ground something? I don't know. Ground balance, I think they call it. So the first thing we need to do is get that down to more like a 60 number. That's pretty good, 66. Let the thing reset here for a second.
I also gotta take my ears off. I can't hear the metal detector with them on. So yeah, let's do that.
All right, we're good to go. So all we're going to do is check around the bottom here. There's a little bit of something right there. So this corner right here is pretty hot. So we'll just take our little scooper and dig that material down the hill a little bit. Spread it all out. And then we'll recheck it and see if the hot spot moved. A little bit of something right there, but it looks like it might be iron. It's kicking around a little bit. That's just my boot. Right in here, we're getting a little target. Let's kick it around some more. So whatever that is, we're going to dig some of that up and put it in our bucket. Maybe we'll just put you guys back here. See if this works out. You probably can't see nothing, but that's okay. We'll talk loud. Still another target right here we need to pick up. Need some bigger tools back here. Get a chip hammer. Ooh, that's a nice looking rock there. Let me show you what we're up against over here. All right, so one of the spots we're finding lots of targets is right down here. We have a little bit of a quartz vein. Looks like maybe a little bit of iron above it. And more quartz up higher. Super dense looking. But that's what we're digging in right now. And we're gonna just keep collecting some of this material around this area. Throwing it into our bucket. Then when we think we get enough, we're gonna go back upstairs and test it. All right, we've collected quite a bit of material. See here in our bucket, we're probably a quarter full on our bucket. We're gonna leave our metal detector and some of the other gear down here in the mine. And we're gonna head back up to the top and do some testing on this material. I don't know what the word is. Prospecting, testing, sampling. Sampling sounds good. All right, I'll see you guys back at the top. Gotta put my safety harness on. And some gloves. So much work. Gold mining. It's not easy. Everything's a process.
Now we were only bringing up 1 bucket of ore, and it's not even full, so we didn't have to bring the ore cart. But it's a lot easier just to leave the cart hooked up on the cable. Bring our bucket up. And I think since we're up here, we don't need our hard hat on. All right, it's time to turn the shaker table back on. Get the water pump flowing. Get the shaker shaking. And we're going to process this material the way we always do. Sift all the fine material on the shaker table first, and then we'll analyze the bigger stuff afterwards. Now if this gets boring, just tell me and we'll do something else. But this is where we start making the money, finding the gold. The way I usually do this, it takes 2 hands. One to scoop out the material into the sift, and a hand to sift it in the thing. So let me see if I can find a spot to put you guys where you can see the whole operation. It's not a perfect spot, but it'll be good enough for a few minutes. So you just scoop the soil out of the bucket, put it into the sieve, shake it over the material, over the table. And I think the more vigorously I shake it, the better it works. Get the leaves out. There's not going to be any golden leaves. Now all the material in this bucket showed up on the metal detector as something worth looking at. So I'm having high hopes that we're going to find something good here. Another leaf. So slowly but surely all these little grooves get filled with heavy material and they just get bounced this way. See that little rock there? It'll continue moving that way. It's kind of stuck right now, but it'll come free and it'll go down to the next trough in a moment. It might need a little more water flow. You can see all the sands over here probably have a lot of fine gold in them. You can see the separation right here where we're getting heavier dirt looking stuff coming out, but it just slowly washes that down here into this waste trough, and everything in the waste trough goes down that hole into this blue bucket. And occasionally we just dump that blue bucket because it just has nothing but dirt in it. But all the good stuff continues down these little fingers and drops out usually on one of these 2 items here. You can see we have a little bit of material down here right now, and it goes down in this container, which goes into the red bucket. In this context, red is good. This is how we spend our Tuesdays. What do you guys do for fun? So sometimes I get too aggressive on the shaking and we end up with bigger material coming out of the sieve on the sides. We'll just throw those back in our bucket. We'll deal with that later.
What that does is it clogs up the little gold paths, and you don't want that.
All right, after we've run all of our samples through the shaker table, we have a full gold pan of stuff that wouldn't go through the screen. We're gonna do the right thing and run it through the rock crusher. Now this is my rock crusher. It used to be a driveway or a sidewalk edger, but we don't need a sidewalk edger. We needed a rock crusher. So we super modified it with a brake drum off of the Willys Jeep. A couple dangling chains and stuff in there. And it's pretty frightening. Now we do have to put our ears back on because it's pretty loud. So I'm going to set you guys up over here in a safe area. And let's get to rock crushing. So we have our container of ore. We're going to set it up here on the shaker table for a minute. See if we can get this thing fired up. Hopefully it starts. All right, other than being extremely loud and terrifying, it works pretty good. So anyway, after we're finished with the rock chipper, and I'm glad we're done with that, we end up with another bucket full of super powdery dirt, and we got to do more shaker tabling. We'll keep using the sifter. It's easier that way. All right, we're gonna let the shaker table run for a few more minutes. We did end up with a pan full of stuff that was not small enough to go through the screen for the shaker table. We're gonna take that back to the barn and pan it out the old-fashioned way. Also, after the shaker table finishes clearing all its grooves out, we're gonna grab that red bucket back there, take that back to the barn also, and pan it out. With any luck, we'll find some gold today. Probably not. All right, it's been running for a few minutes by itself. Let's check all the grooves, make sure they're empty. Then we're ready to head back to the barn. Pretty much all the troughs look like they've emptied out. If there's anything in them, I always like to err to the side of the gold, just because there might be some heavy flakes down in the grooves. We'll say that's good enough. All right, we got the mine all shut down. We have a red bucket from the shaker machine. It has a bunch of goo in the bottom. We're going to dump our stuff that we found today in there. Back to the barn, do some panning. All right, we're back up at the barn where we have some running water. We're going to go ahead and wash all this soil into our gold pan. Get the dirt out of it. Probably have too much water in here. That's okay. Just keep washing out the mud. Getting rid of the muddy water.
we'll wash this bucket really good into our gold pan. Pretty sure if there's any gold in there, we got it. So we're going to go ahead and just wet this a few times and classify it. I think by classifying, what I mean is we're just going to shake it down. If there's any gold, it should get to the bottom. You just need to get everything loosey-goosey in there. Go ahead and keep floating the mud off the top. Keep adding water to it. Just trying to get all the gold to the bottom and all the mud out. Because you can't see anything with that mud. And then we'll just give it a little shake. And you really don't want to go around in circles. You kind of want to go back and forth, and side to side. Circles don't seem to help it much. Let's get this spoon out of the way. I don't want to get it all muddy. First, we're trying to float all the mud out of the top. So we get down to nice clean water. Now, if you were doing this out in a stream, you just have to concede that you're going to have to work with muddy water. But since we have fresh water here, we're going to use it. Now, a lot of parts of the world don't have this red clay. And I'm sure it's a little bit easier, but around here, red clay is everything. But slowly but surely, we'll get rid of the clay. And the goal is that all the gold should be at the bottom. Gold should be heavy. That's how the whole principle of panning works, I think. We don't really know. All right, we're going to say that that's enough cleaning of the sands here. A little bit more, maybe. All right, now this next run, what we're going to do is we're going to shake the pan, make sure that everything's down to the bottom, and we're going to get rid of the top third of this right into our bucket. So now we have this much left. Wash it back down to the bottom. Do it again. Try to get the gold to the bottom, right down in that ridge. And just scrape the top third off. And again, wash it back down in the bottom. Now you notice I'm keeping all this stuff we're throwing out in this bucket. So if we mess it up, we can always go back and do it again.
And we're just trying to get all the gold down to that bottom edge. Scrape some off. Get it all to the bottom. Now we're going to do it a little bit different. Let me see if I can get this bucket in frame here. Oh yeah, you can see that. Now we're just going to put some water in there. And we're going to wash the tops off. Put it back down inside. And wash the tops off. Get it back down to the bottom. And I'm using the little grooves here, not the big ones, because I'm expecting to see really fine gold. Get it to settle down in there and then wash off the light stuff. Now keep in mind, most of this shouldn't be very light because it already made it through our shaker table for the most part. Now I think that's about as far as I want to go because most of this is gold now. Let me see if we can show that. So we'll tap the gold to the top side. Not really getting a good separation here. There's 3 chunks that keep wanting to go to the high side. So let's make sure that those aren't gold chunks before we chuck them out. They might be. I think that might be a piece of gold right there. Super heavy. You can tell when I try to get the coal to go up, those rocks move. See if we can separate this a little bit more. So that top edge of the pan is loaded with flour gold. The rest of it is questionable, but I don't think I want to throw any of it away. Well, all right, it looks like we came up with quite a bit of flour gold, but no big chunky gold like we were looking for today. What I do with all the flour gold is we mix it into a little steel triangle thing and put it in the forge and melt it down. We'll usually get a little nugget out of the bottom of that, and most of those that you've seen in my collection, that's where it comes from. The next step is to transfer all of the contents of this into this little steel crucible. And we're going to add some flux to it and put it in the forge and let it melt down. With any luck, we'll get a little gold button at the bottom. All right, we have our little crucible of concentrate up here at the blacksmith shop. Now in a perfect world, we would have dried this out before we tried to put it in here. Since we're trying to shoot a video, we're just going to do it. Now we need to add a little bit of borax to the top of this mixture. Perfect. And we can grab onto this with one of our pairs of tongs. Should work pretty well. We'll just slide him right in here and start cooking. Now you can tell that borax is starting to heat up already. And we're just going to let this sit in there until everything gets nice and white hot. We might even close the doors to make it heat up quicker. You got to be careful with that flame coming out the front. It's pretty warm. It's hard to see it, but it shoots way out here somewhere. So when the concentrate is dry, this process normally takes about 15 minutes. With it wet, it might take 16 minutes. We'll just let it sit there and cook for a little bit, and we'll be back in a few minutes. All right, it's starting to get really warm in there. Obviously, we need a little bit more time. I can tell the backside is still kind of a dark color. We need the whole thing to get that bright red color. All right, our crucible has been in there for about 15 minutes. Everything is a nice, even white red color. Perfect. Now at this point, we're just going to go ahead and turn the gas off. And that'll let the forge die down. And we're just going to have to let this thing sit in there nice and easy by itself and cool down. And with any luck, when it cools down to not very red, we can bring it out of there and dump it out, see what we get. I was able to pull the crucible out to the front. You can see there's a puddle on the top. Most of that is the borax. And in a perfect world, I would have put a little bit of borax in the bottom of the bowl so that as it boils up, it helps separate any impurities from the gold. But we'll see what we end up with. It's slowly starting to cool down. You can see the top is mostly not red. That bottom is still super hot. We'll give it a little bit more time. All right, most of the crucible is not red anymore, but if you look in the middle, that's all just molten glass and other products mixed in there. Now, we don't want to quench that whole thing in water. That molten glass will pretty much fracture when it hits the water. So we're going to let it cool down naturally. Then we can hit it with a hammer. It should come out all in one piece. It'll be a few more minutes. It's still pretty red in there. Now, most of the particles of sand have turned to glass. Tell it's nice and hard in there. A little bit of non-glass product in there. So it looks like most of the redness is gone. So we're going to go ahead and grab this thing by one of its legs, flip it over right here on the anvil. See what we get. Oh yeah, there's a piece of gold right there at the end. Let me see if I can show you. Now it's not a big piece, but right there at the end we have a little bitty button. Most likely we could have let this cook a little bit longer, but I was kind of in a hurry to make the video, so we'll say that that's a successful run. Now there's still a lot of glass and stuff in here. We're going to hit this thing harder, and there might still be more gold right in the bottom. Usually all the gold comes out in one little nugget, so I'm sure that little nugget is all we're going to get. All right, I have the anvil all cleaned off. And from everything in there, this is all we ended up with. We have a couple little flakes of gold that came out of the bottom. And yeah, if you add all that up, you'll probably get 0.002 of an ounce. Not even. So is it profitable? Probably not. Is it fun? Absolutely. But I am holding out that we're going to find a better way, sample more material, process more material, and occasionally we'll find those nuggets. So you guys get outside, do something fun, come back and tell me about it.